What can you do?
Okay, thank you, colleagues. We will resume business, and I would, in the strongest terms, remind all members that all businesses follow on business. That can have an impact on any day, but that is the case. We will proceed with our business, and the next item is consideration of motion 19456 on a financial resolution for the Assisted Dying for Terminally Ill Adults Scotland Bill, and I call on Neil Gray to move the motion.
Moved.
Thank you, and I call on Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today we're being asked to write what is effectively a blank cheque to make it easier to choose to die than to live. And voting to do this, I don't believe, is a neutral act. I think it has consequences. Scottish Hospices said that if assisted dying is legalised, then hospices could see their fundraising efforts impacted. The Royal College of Psychiatrists in Scotland said they did not think that costs could be absorbed within existing budgets. The Royal College of GPs said that trying to add it onto a busy general practice would be very difficult. And I've not touched on the crisis, of course, in social care that sees staff on low pay, disabled people having to rely on incontinence pads for hours because there's no money to pay staff to go in often enough to change them. Or the housing crisis that sees 10,000 disabled people stuck in their own homes. Or the fact that 1 in 4 people who need palliative care in Scotland don't get it. So what would the costs of this bill mean for the opportunities to address all of that? Presiding Officer, as we'd expect, many of these issues were raised at the committee scrutinising the bill. The committee concluded that costs may also vary significantly according to a number of factors. We don't know the costs of what it is to make this bill safe. But what we do know is that we cannot amend this bill to fix the crisis in social care, housing or the NHS. The costs of doing these things are huge, and rightly so. This is life or death. Colleagues, we're asked today to support a blank cheque for assisted suicide, and whatever the costs are in the end for that, it means money diverted away from services designed to support constituents to live well, to a service that makes it easier for them to choose to die. I've said all along the risks of this bill are real, and they are. The bill is proposed in a context where the NHS is in crisis, social care is creaking at the seams, and 1 in 4 people don't get the palliative care they need. To change that context, we need fundamental changes in health and social care, housing and much, much more to improve the lives of our constituents. Spending money, a lot of it according to evidence, on assisted suicide reduces money for other areas. Voting for the resolution is therefore, I say again, not a neutral act. We'd be licensing governments to spend money on assisted suicide in a world where we so desperately need money in public services that help people to live. No matter how hard or intolerable life can be, there must always be hope for a better world, one where we have the right to practical assistance and support to lead ordinary lives. And so today, I ask members to vote against the blank cheque to make it easier to choose to die, and to instead continue to fight for a better world where we can all choose to live in a world that supports us to do it well. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, and I call on Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think every member in the Chamber should know that voting for the Government's financial resolution today is not a vote for or against this bill. It's a vote to carry out due parliamentary process after a bill has passed stage 1 and is about to start stage 2, which begins next Tuesday. Presiding Officer, a vote against the financial resolution will not stop the bill, as I fear may be the intention of those who intend to vote against it, but it will merely delay it, and any amendments that would trigger the need for a financial resolution will fall. So voting against the financial resolution benefits no one, whether you are for or against this bill. I welcome the fact that there is a free vote on the bill, and it's of course natural that there are impassioned views on all sides. Our respectful debate at stage 1 was widely acknowledged as showing Parliament in its best light. So I urge members not to vote for an attempt to subvert parliamentary process, which benefits no one, not least the reputation of this Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. I call Bob Doris.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I wasn't going to speak this afternoon, but having heard the comments, I feel compelled to. I have no idea, Presiding Officer, how many of our colleagues are following these proceedings online this afternoon, and will be around to vote this afternoon and make a considered opinion and vote on the financial resolution. I voted against assisted dying at stage 1. I anticipate that will be my vote at stage 3. I will work constructively at stage 2 to amend the bill to bring in safeguards, but I still feel, and I put on record, I don't feel those safeguards will allow me to vote for the bill at stage 3, for some of the reasons that actually Pam Duncan-Glancy has outlined this afternoon. My slight concern, I suppose, would be, and I'm still thinking how I'm going to vote as I speak to you, Presiding Officer, is that if the financial resolution was not to pass this afternoon because not other colleagues were aware that this procedural action... yes, of course, Mr Mason, I will.
John Mason.
I thank you very much for giving way. Does he not think that it is the duty of the 129 MSPs to be here or to be watching online? And we can't just make excuses because some MSPs on a Thursday afternoon fancy their afternoon off.
Bob Doris.
I would ask Mr Mason not to put words in my mouth. I'm giving no one an excuse for not being here on a Thursday afternoon. I am here every Thursday afternoon, and quite frankly, I'm upset some of my colleagues do not take that opportunity and do seem to leave this Parliament early, and I don't think that is good enough, Mr Mason. So I would ask you not to put words into my mouth. The point I would make is the Parliament took a view that I disagreed with at stage 1, and it's whether we should use this as a mechanism by which to delay the legislation or be against the legislation. And I'm still listening to the comments of colleagues, including that of Mr Mason. Yes?
Jeremy Balfour.
I'm grateful for that, and I do understand the point that the member is trying to make here. But would he also recognise the point that Pam Duncan-Glancy made in her speech, that we are, as a Parliament, whether we're for or against this bill, been asked to write a blank cheque? And as we are told often by Scottish Government and yourself, Mr Doris, we have a fixed budget. That money will have to come from somewhere. And does he recognise that some other service will have to be affected if this financial resolution goes through, and whether that is education or other health services or transport will be affected if we vote for this tonight?
Bob Doris.
Mr Balfour, for that intervention, I would say to Mr Balfour that I think it is thus with every single financial resolution that we bring to this place. The point I did want to make, Mr Balfour, notwithstanding the intervention of Mr Mason and Mr Balfour, was actually to the Scottish Government. Can I make this point first, Mr MacArthur, and then of course I'll take your intervention if the Presiding Officer permits me to do so. And that is that at stage 2 I am seeking amendments, quite substantial ones, in relation to the role of social work, which may have quite a significant cost, in relation to palliative care, which I was not able to get on to the stage 2 amendment process, ruled as inadmissible because the bill was deemed to be too narrow, but there's a policy intent there, and that would have substantial additional costs. So my question actually for Government was, and this was the reason for making this point, Presiding Officer, is will the Scottish Government keep under review the costs associated with this bill as part of the financial resolution? Because obviously many of us in this place want to make sure that if this legislation does go into the statute book, that it is costed and it is workable, but not workable as a policy intent in itself, but workable with all the safeguards that many of us would like to see, even if then we may not actually vote for this legislation in itself. I think Mr MacArthur, sorry, Mr Glancy.
Liam MacArthur.
Thank you for taking the intervention, and I thank Mr Doris for taking the intervention, but also commend him on the way he set out the argument. I mean, this is an issue that has clearly drawn strong emotions on both sides, but what we are being asked to do here is a procedural act that will allow the amendments, some lodged by Mr Doris, some indeed lodged by Pam Duncan-Glancy, that have budgetary implications to be considered and voted on. And part of the debate around those amendments will be on whether or not they are affordable within the context of the budget. I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary will respond to the point he was directing to the Government in terms of keeping a running total of that. But this is not a blank cheque. It will be for members in the Health Committee to consider the arguments made in support of various amendments as to whether or not they are realistic, whether they're affordable, whether they provide sufficient safeguards. And ultimately it will be Parliament that will vote on the bill at stage 3, whether or not it meets the required standards that Mr Doris has set out.
Bob Doris.
Thank Mr MacArthur for that point. I think we would put a caveat towards that, Mr MacArthur, and that is that in this Parliament we allocate budgets to all sorts of, to the NHS, to health and social care partnerships through local authorities and the NHS and to other bodies. And those bodies have to, they have to use the resources they have to meet all the outcomes that we ask of them. And they sometimes tell us they are stretched, they are under pressure, and that is often challenging. And resources are always limited, irrespective of our aspirations in this place. And I think that's a reasonable point to make, Mr MacArthur. If there's time, of course, Presiding Officer, would take Pam Duncan-Glancy, but I have no idea if there's time.
You may take Ms Duncan-Glancy and then conclude, Mr Doris. Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I just want to acknowledge the point that my colleague Bob Doris is making, and also to say that I too submitted or tried to submit amendments to the legislation that would address some of these wider issues that I alluded to in my contribution, but I was told it was out with the scope of the bill. So does he not agree with me then that really putting enough safeguards in to safeguard against this bill is not just not possible within the bill because they're out of scope, but actually we don't know how much that could cost, which is effectively a blank cheque?
In conclusion, Mr Doris.
In conclusion, I would say to Pam Duncan-Glancy that I think that's a debate for during stage 2 and stage 3. And also in conclusion, Presiding Officer, is I don't think I'll be seeking to stand in the way of this financial resolution, but I will not be in a position to support it.
Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Like Bob Doris, I wasn't going to speak in this debate. I actually assumed it would just go straight to a vote. I didn't realise there would be a discussion such as this. I was wondering why there's such a delay for the Cabinet Secretary to come, but clearly people want to put their views on record. I'm standing speaking. I only pressed my button after Rona Mackay, so I will come to her point in a minute. But I think we also have to accept we're not dealing with a normal piece of legislation here. It is a very emotive piece of legislation. It has been very expertly taken to Parliament to this stage by Liam MacArthur, who I have a great deal of respect for. And I listened carefully to the Stage 1 debate. I took a different position from him. But it is a Members' Bill. It's got a financial resolution coming forward from the Government. And it is, very rarely for us in this chamber, a free vote as well. So I think that's why we do have a slight difference to normally those of us who might oppose a Government bill but would then still support a financial resolution because we respect that the Government has a majority to take through their legislation. This is, I believe, slightly different. But where I have to respectfully disagree with Rona Mackay is this is a debate where we have had impassioned views on both sides, and I remember her speech, which she gave in Stage 1, in support of this bill. I just have to correct her. I will not be supporting this financial resolution tonight, not because I want to circumvent the will of Parliament at Stage 1, not because I want to use procedures, parliamentary procedures, to stop it. I just want to be consistent in the way I voted on this bill. I didn't support it at Stage 1. I don't believe this bill is correct, and therefore I think I would be being hypocritical if I then voted to put the money behind a bill that I don't support. So I just simply wanted to say to Rona Mackay, and I'll give way if she'd like to come in, that I'm not doing this to use politics to circumvent the will of Parliament. I'm using it as a consistent approach to my opposition to this bill, which I've had for a long time, although I've listened to both views, and I think it would be inconsistent to then vote one way at Stage 1 and a different way today on the financial resolution. I'll give way to Rona Mackay.
Rona Mackay.
Thank you for giving way. So can the member confirm if he's ever done that before?
I can confirm that I've not done that before, and I hoped I'd explained that in my preamble, that this is different. This is a Members' Bill, and this is a Members' Bill that is very much down to our own choice. It's not one where we are whipped by our parties. It's one that we are almost uniquely, I can't think any other time in this term, apart from my party had a free vote on the GRR, other parties didn't. But I think that does make a difference, that when we are not instructed how we're voting as a group of SNP, Green, Labour, Liberal Democrat or Conservative MSPs, we are each doing it on our own. And there might be some of my colleagues who voted against the bill at Stage 1 who will vote for the financial resolution tonight, and I will respect that view. But I just took exception to Rona Mackay earlier saying all of us who are going to oppose the financial resolution tonight are doing it to try and circumvent a bill. I'm not. I've lodged an amendment to Liam MacArthur's bill. I'm engaged in that process, but I just personally believe it wouldn't be right to vote against it at Stage 1 and then for the bill, the financial resolution. I'll briefly give way again.
Rona Mackay.
I hear what you're saying. You must also accept then, for those that are against the bill who are submitting amendments, if the financial resolution doesn't go through, they won't get their amendment through.
In conclusion, Mr Ross.
I do accept that, but again, what was troubling me when Rona Mackay spoke earlier, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think this financial resolution is going to go through. This bill had a majority at stage 1. I can't imagine anyone who supported the bill at stage 1 will not support the financial resolution. So we already know the outcome. Therefore, what is wrong with those of us who oppose the bill at stage 1 voting against financial resolution because we don't want resources to go to a bill that we don't believe in? And that's the point I'm trying to make. But in conclusion, Presiding Officer, I wasn't going to speak. I think it has perhaps been a helpful debate for members to put on record their views. I think we know which way it's going to go, but this is an issue that divides opinions in this chamber, in our families, in our communities, and is perhaps not surprising it's dividing opinions on the financial resolution. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Like others, I wasn't going to speak, but I just want to make a short contribution to say that I think that we were commended in the way in which the Parliament handled this. The debate was very sensitively done and it was steered through very well by Liam MacArthur, and it has been commented on many times. So in my view, it is important to allow this to the next stage, and to do that we have to support the financial resolution. We need to get that through, and as Mr MacArthur has said, at stage 2 this will allow us to further debate the issues. There are 300 or so amendments, so members have had a real opportunity to get those amendments in, and we will debate those amendments to try and strengthen the bill or allow members to vote for or against in a free vote. And that will also include us discussing the financial implications. So I hope that members will ensure that this financial resolution does get through at this stage.
Thank you. Edward Mountain.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I, like many members, wasn't going to stand up and speak in this debate this evening. But I feel I just have to correct 1 or 2 points, if I may. There's been talk about people being here or not being here, and whether they should be here. Some people can't be here, and there'll be a lot of people who, when it comes to the Stage 2 amendments, are unable to attend the amendments at Stage 2 because they are attending other committees. And so we should never criticise, in my opinion, people who are unable to attend a meeting unless we know specifically why they can't. I agree with Pam Duncan-Clancy that this is effectively a blank cheque that is being written by the government to say that whatever this bill costs, they will cover the cost for. I wish when it comes to palliative care that would have been the same case, because we know that palliative care is not correctly funded. Presiding Officer, I wonder, and I've heard the arguments for supporting this to allow the bill to go further. My position has always been the same. I cannot and can never support this bill, not because of religious reasons, but because that is what I believe personally. And therefore it would be wrong, I believe, Presiding Officer, for me to stand here or to cast a vote this afternoon on a bill that I cannot support in any shape or form, whether it's amended or not. So I will be forced to vote against the financial resolution today because of my conscience. And I don't think any member of this Parliament should criticise anyone who do that for that specific reason, Presiding Officer. Thank you.
And I call on the Cabinet Secretary to respond.
Presiding Officer, first of all, can I offer an apology that I have offered to you privately, publicly, but also to the rest of the Chamber. It's not a reason, but I think it's important that colleagues are aware that I was on a call with other UK ministerial colleagues, Welsh and Northern Irish ministers, and I was not aware that business was running ahead. My apologies to you and to the Chamber. The Scottish Government remains neutral on this bill. The Presiding Officer has made her determination that, due to amendments that have been lodged, a financial resolution is needed for Mr MacArthur's Assisted Dying for Terminally Ill Adults Bill in order for those cost-bearing amendments to be voted on. The Scottish Government lodged the financial resolution to enable the Parliament to take a decision on the amendments, as only a minister can lodge a motion for a financial resolution. I will do shortly. Without a financial resolution, any amendment that has a financial impact can be debated, but depending on the degree of the financial impact may automatically fall, as it cannot be voted on. I give way to Mr Balfour.
Jeremy Balfour.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for taking my intervention? Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, if these amendments were to be passed at stage 2, what costing has Scottish Government given to them, and where does he believe that money would come from, which budget would he go taking it from to pay for that cost?
Cabinet Secretary.
These are matters for Parliament to determine on. This is a bill. This is a member's bill that has a free vote. The government is neutral upon it, and I'll come on to elements around the costings shortly. We are clear that it is for Parliament to decide upon this bill, and so it is for members to decide whether or not to support this financial resolution today. The vote on the financial resolution is not, crucially, a vote on whether members agree or disagree with the figures in Mr MacArthur's financial memorandum. The Government has put on record to the Health Committee our position on the financial memorandum or on the policy of the bill. It is a vote on whether the committee will be able to vote on cost-bearing amendments during its Stage 2 consideration. Presiding Officer.
Thank you. And the question on this motion will be put at decision time. And there are 4 questions to be put as a result of today's business. The first is that motion 19422 in the name of Gillian Martin on the Natural Environment Scotland Bill at Stage 1 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed. The next question is that motion 18730 in the name of Shona Robertson on a financial resolution Natural Environment Scotland Bill be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. The motion is therefore agreed. The next question is that motion 19454 in the name of Gillian Martin on a motion on legislative consent, planning and infrastructure bill UK legislation be agreed. Are we all agreed? The motion is therefore agreed. The final question is that motion 19456 in the name of Shona Robertson on a financial resolution assisted dying for terminally ill adults Scotland Bill be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed, therefore we will move to a vote and there will be a short suspension to allow members to access the digital voting system.